I never imagined my simple coffee shop would lead me to him, the infamous billionaire everyone feared. They called him heartless, ruthless, impossible. I called him by his first name. This is how love cracked open the vault he called a heart. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and notification bell if you love stories about transformation, authentic love, and breaking stereotypes. This journey changed my life, and it might just change yours too. I never thought my grandmother's recipes would lead me here. My name is Nina, and 3 years ago, I took everything I had, my savings, my dreams, and my family's century-old baking secrets, and opened Sweet Remedy in downtown. Not the glossy part where tourists snap photos, but the real heart where actual people live. My little cafe became something of a neighborhood living room. I knew everyone's orders before they spoke them, their children's names, their triumphs and heartaches. That's how I've always measured wealth, by connections, not dollars. That Tuesday morning was unusually quiet. Rain tapped against the windows, creating that cozy atmosphere that makes people linger over their coffee. The bell above the door chimed, and there he stood, Ethan Wilson. I recognized him immediately from business magazines and local news. The man who demolished historic buildings for luxury condos. The man whose employees trembled in his presence. The billionaire with eyes that could freeze fire. He didn't look around like most first-timers. He just walked straight to the counter, phone pressed to his ear, barking something about unacceptable margins and immediate termination. When he finally acknowledged my existence, his gaze was clinical, assessing, as if I were a spreadsheet with disappointing numbers. Black coffee, no sugar. Not a question, not even a complete sentence. I remember smiling, not my customer service smile, but my real one, the one my mother says could charm the thorns off a rose. I'm afraid we don't serve coffee that way here. For the first time, I had his full attention. He looked genuinely confused, like a computer encountering an error code. At Sweet Remedy, we believe names matter more than orders. I'm Nina. And you are? Something flickered across his face. Irritation, surprise, maybe a ghost of amusement. For 3 heartbeats, we just looked at each other. The ruthless titan of industry, and the baker who dared to ask his name. Ethan, he finally said, the word sounding rusty, as if he rarely used it himself. I made him my grandmother's special blend, the one with hints of cardamom and vanilla that she swore could warm the coldest hearts. When our fingers brushed during the exchange, I noticed something unexpected in his eyes, loneliness, the kind that no amount of money can fill. The kind I saw in many of my elderly customers who had outlived their loved ones. As he left without another word, I couldn't help but think how strange it was that a man who owned half the skyline seemed to have no place that felt like home. My cafe, full of mismatched furniture and the sound of laughter, suddenly felt like the richest place in the city. I didn't expect to see Ethan again. Men like him don't return to places like mine. Yet there he was the very next day, standing in line like anyone else. And the day after that, and the one after that, always at 8:17 a.m. precisely, as if scheduled in his digital calendar between crush competitors and acquire small businesses. He started with that same abrupt order, black coffee, but I kept gently correcting him. "Good morning, Ethan. How are you today?" Small ripples against a stone wall. By the second week, he'd nod slightly when entering. By the third, he actually responded to my questions, though with the minimum possible words. Progress was measured in syllables. My regulars noticed him immediately. How could they not? Some whispered about his company's reputation for gentrifying neighborhoods like ours. Mrs. Jenkins, who'd lived on our block for 50 years, called him that man who tears down memories for money. I found myself in the strange position of defending someone I barely knew. "There's always more to people than the rumors we hear," I told her, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. Then came the morning I was running late. My sister's car had broken down, and I'd driven across town to help. The cafe was packed, orders backing up, and me working alone. Without a word, Ethan removed his tailored jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and stepped behind the counter. For 2 hours, he worked alongside me, methodically, efficiently, as if he'd done it before. My first job was at a diner, he explained later, when the rush had subsided. 16 years old, saving for college. His voice carried something I hadn't heard before, a trace of pride. I told him about learning to bake on my grandmother's worn kitchen stool, how she measured ingredients with her heart instead of cups, how I'd worked double shifts at 3 jobs to save for this place, how Sweet Remedy wasn't just a cafe but a promise I'd made to her before she passed. For the first time, he didn't check his watch or phone while I spoke. He just listened, really listened. And somewhere in that exchange of stories, my childhood in a house full of cousins and music and spilled flour, his in boarding schools and silent dinners, something shifted, like finding unexpected common ground on opposite sides of a wide river. "You must think I'm some sort of monster," he said quietly as he was leaving. "I think you're someone who forgot how to be anything else," I answered honestly. The slight smile that touched his lips stayed with me long after he'd gone. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Certified mail, official letterhead. My landlord was selling the building to Wilson Development Group. 30 days to vacate. My hands trembled as I read it again and again, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves. 5 years of dreams, of early mornings and late nights, of community built over countless conversations and shared moments, all reduced to a corporate acquisition. When Ethan walked in the next morning, I couldn't even look at him. The betrayal felt physical, like a blow to the chest. He sensed something was wrong immediately. Another surprising development in our strange friendship. The man who once barely noticed other humans now picked up on the subtle shift in my demeanor. "Nina, what's happened?" I slid the letter across the counter without a word, watched his face as he read it, searching for any sign of prior knowledge, any flicker of guilt. There was none, just confusion, then sharp understanding. "I can fix this," he said, already reaching for his phone. "I'll have my team redirect the acquisition. You can stay. Better yet, I'll buy the building myself and lease it to you at half what you're paying now." The offer was generous, logical, efficient, exactly what I would have expected from him, and utterly missing the point. "So, I can be your charity case, your good deed, the little cafe you saved to prove you're not the heartless billionaire everyone says you are." My words hit harder than I intended. He looked genuinely stunned, as if I'd slapped him. "I'm trying to help you." "No, you're trying to solve me like I'm one of your business problems. But this isn't about the building, Ethan. It's about what this place means. The memories in these walls. The community we've built. You can't just throw money at that and consider it fixed." I told him about Lucy, who wrote her college application essay at the corner table. About the elderly couple who had their first date here after meeting at my book club. About the local artists whose work hung on my walls because they needed someone to believe in them before galleries would. When you reduce everything to transactions, you miss what makes life worth living. And I won't be part of that worldview, even if it means losing everything I've built. He left without another word. I spent that night making peace with the idea of starting over somewhere else. But what broke my heart wasn't losing the cafe. It was the realization that for a brief moment, I'd thought Ethan might actually understand. That the walls around his heart had begun to crumble enough to let something real slip through. I was wrong, I thought. Some people simply don't know how to value what can't be quantified on a balance sheet. 3 days passed with no sign of Ethan. I'd begun packing up non-essentials, researching new locations I couldn't afford, and trying to figure out how to tell my loyal customers we'd be closing. Every time the bell above the door chimed, my heart leapt despite myself. But it was never him. Until Sunday morning, before opening hours. I was elbow-deep in sourdough when knocking interrupted my thoughts. There stood Ethan, looking unlike I'd ever seen him. Casual clothes, no tie, hair slightly disheveled. But it was his eyes that caught me off guard. Humility isn't something you can fake. "I'm not here to solve your problem," he said. "I'm here to understand it. Will you show me?" That day changed everything. I closed the cafe and took him on a walking tour of our neighborhood. The community garden where local kids learned to grow vegetables. The senior center where my regulars gathered for weekly chess tournaments. The mural commemorating the Civil Rights March that had started on this very corner decades ago. "This isn't just property," I explained. "It's a living, breathing ecosystem of human connections." For the first time, he truly listened, not to respond or solve, but to comprehend something outside his experience. At day's end, sitting on a park bench watching children play, he confessed something I never expected. "I grew up believing vulnerability was weakness. My father measured worth entirely by financial success. Sentiment was for lesser minds," he'd say. The following week, Ethan appeared at our neighborhood council meeting. Nobody quite knew how to react to the notorious developer sitting quietly in the back, just listening. When the topic turned to affordable housing, he spoke briefly, not about profit margins, but about sustainable community development. I watched skeptical faces turn curious. He started showing up at community events I mentioned, awkwardly at first, a shark out of water, hovering at the edges of conversations. But he kept coming back. At a fundraiser for the local youth center, I found him deep in conversation with Mr. Washington, our most outspoken anti-development activist. They were actually laughing together. "He's different with you," my sister whispered, watching Ethan help set up chairs for a neighborhood concert. I hadn't fully noticed the transformation until a business associate of his spotted us having coffee together. The man approached, all forced smiles and artificial pleasantries. "Ethan, the board's been asking questions about the Morrison project delay. They're concerned about your recent decisions." The old Ethan would have immediately switched to business mode. This Ethan glanced at his watch and said, "I promised Nina I'd help with a delivery this afternoon. Schedule something for tomorrow." As the associate walked away, visibly shocked, Ethan turned to me with a smile that reached his eyes. Some things matter more than quarterly projections. What do you call it when friendship blooms into something more? When conversations stretch into the night and laughter comes easier than breathing? When someone who once seemed from another world now feels like home? We didn't label it at first. Maybe we were both too afraid of breaking this delicate thing growing between us. The first time Ethan came to Sunday dinner at my parents' house, my father studied him with suspicious eyes. "So you're the man who buys up neighborhoods like mine?" Not a question, a challenge. I watched Ethan carefully place his fork down, meeting my father's gaze directly. "I was that man," he said quietly. "I'm working on becoming someone else." By dessert, they were arguing good-naturedly about basketball teams, and my mother was sending him home with enough leftovers for days. Later, she pulled me aside. "That man looks at you like you're the answer to every question he's ever had," she whispered. "But be careful, Nina. People like him and people like us live in different worlds." Those worlds collided often. At a charity gala where Ethan was being honored, I overheard whispers about Wilson's exotic new girlfriend and wondering how long this phase will last. I felt the weight of assumptions, that I was after his money, that he was experiencing some midlife crisis, that we couldn't possibly have anything real. Ethan noticed my discomfort immediately. In the middle of networking with people who could advance his business interests, he crossed the room, took my hand, and led me outside to the garden. "They don't matter," he said fiercely. "Their opinions don't matter." "But they're your world," I countered. "Not anymore." We had our fights, of course. His instinct to control situations, to throw money at problems instead of dealing with the messy human emotions beneath them. My stubborn independence, my reluctance to let him help even when I needed it. Cultural differences that seemed small until they weren't, different expectations about family, communication styles, even how to spend weekends. There was the night he showed up at my apartment, soaking wet from walking in the rain, looking lost. The board was threatening to remove him as CEO if he continued changing the company's direction. "Everything I've built is at risk," he said, his voice hollow. "Everything I thought I wanted." I made him tea in my chip mugs, wrapped him in a threadbare blanket my grandmother had crocheted, and listened. "What do you want now?" I asked finally. He looked around my small apartment, at the family photos and handmade decorations, then back at me. "This," he said simply, "a life that feels real." That night, tangled together in my too small bed, I realized the power of seeing someone, truly seeing them, beyond the walls they've built, beyond the labels the world has given them, and the miracle of being seen in return. 1 year later, and the cafe still stands, not just saved but thriving. The entire block has been designated a cultural heritage site, protected from development. Ethan used his influence differently this time, to preserve rather than replace, to enhance rather than erase. Wilson Development Group still exists, but with a transformed mission, revitalizing neighborhoods while maintaining their character and affordability. Ethan stepped down as CEO to become Chief Community Officer, a position he created that focuses on sustainable development with existing residents at the table. His former board members thought he'd lost his mind. Now they're studying his model as profits increase alongside community approval. Our love story became something neither of us expected, a catalyst for change beyond ourselves. The youth center Ethan helped fund has sent 3 kids to college on full scholarships. The affordable housing initiative we launched together has kept families in homes they would have lost. And us, we're building something new together, a life that honors both our worlds. I still run my cafe. He still attends business meetings. But now our fingerprints are on each other's lives in ways neither of us could have imagined. People ask if I set out to change him. I didn't. I simply refused to see him as anything less than fully human, capable of growth, worthy of love, bigger than the box the world had put him in. In doing so, I discovered something powerful. When you truly love someone, you don't change them. You create space for them to remember who they were always meant to be. This story isn't just about finding love, it's about seeing the humanity in everyone, even those the world has written off as cold and unreachable. If you found value in my journey, please like, share, and comment below with someone in your life who helped you transform. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is believe in someone when no one else will.